Uh, every day when you pick up the newspapers or you get Marketing Edinburgh's news, there's something happening in the sector. In the last 2 days, tech unicorn FanDuel agrees merger. Alpha Ven to launch Bitcoin ATM in Edinburgh. St. Andrew's Archdiocese launch Mass and Confession app. Which to me sounds like an episode of Father Ted, but we're not going to go there. And so our first speaker, Brian Corcoran, he's the director of the Turing Festival, and he's going to give us an insight into what's new in digital and what are the opportunities for tourism. Brian, over to you.
Thanks. Good morning. First things first, there's some big news in technology in Edinburgh this morning. Skyscanner was just mentioned, and it was just announced this morning that Skyscanner was bought by a Chinese company for £1.4 billion. So pretty amazing news for the tech scene here. And coming fast on the back of FanDuel merging with their biggest rival in the US last week. Free agent floated on the stock market about 10 days ago. So it's been a big few weeks for the technology industry in Edinburgh, and combined with things like Codebase and Turing Festival perhaps has a role to play there. Definitely a time where things are moving pretty quickly in the tech sector. So on that, I thought I was thinking about what to speak about this morning, and I thought about an overview of where technology is going and sort of the bigger picture trends is maybe something that might be of interest. If you want to know about technology trends or in niche things, there's lots of material online you can read about. This is maybe having a look at macro trends and where that might be going, and then drilling down a little bit into what that might mean for all of us and for your businesses. So using the technology companies as a lens to look at what's happening in the world. So first of all, a little bit about me. Very quickly, marketing background, mostly digital marketing over the last few years. And now one of the hats I wear is I'm director of the Turing Festival. If you haven't been, it's in August. It's the biggest tech event in Scotland. And particularly the marketing day. Some of it's around building software products, which may not be as relevant, but the marketing day I think is probably relevant for everyone in the room. So one to keep an eye out for in the beginning of August. If you want to get in touch with me, there's the channels and the context. So feel free. I'm around afterwards as well. Okay, so the drivers of technology, and as James mentioned, the world is changing quickly. Technology is a big part of that, and even technology is starting to affect changes on a broader scale outside of the tech realm. Would we have President Trump without social media, for example? Almost certainly not. So two things driving it. One is tech companies, the sort of the top-down push. Here's what we think you need, and here it is, or the bottom-up pull from users. I'm going to look at this mostly from the tech company's perspective, and we can then look at some stuff about how users are demanding and reacting to tech, and then what that can mean for us. So these are some of the tech companies that you'll all be familiar with, I expect, that are affecting and reshaping in some ways society. Uber, with their slightly odd new logo, trying to disrupt the way transport is done throughout the world, really, and being hugely successful in some places, resistance in others, and there are other, China, for example, has a gigantic Uber competitor that Apple's invested in, but transport being affected by tech. Netflix, directly changing how we watch TV, but actually I think there's a bigger picture about media consumption there. Tesla seems on the outside to be a car company, but Tesla is really trying to disrupt energy, how we create and use energy. Elon Musk says his two biggest aims are to get humanity to stop using fossil fuels and to get humanity off planet Earth. So he's an ambitious dude. BuzzFeed is, the kind of poster child of new media, and has, I think it's 200 million unique readers every month, so very influential. Spotify, pretty much altering how we consume music. I used to buy an album pretty much once a week. I now pay Spotify $10 a month to cover all of that. So that's actually an insight into how a lot of this innovation is destructive and disruptive of older models as well. And then that's a bank icon, supposedly. Nobody's yet disrupted banks, but surely they will soon. Hopefully they will soon. I don't know if they'll disrupt banking as a thing or if they'll disrupt little bits of banking. TransferWise, taking on international payments, things like that. So nobody's affecting us more than the big five. And some people argue that it should be the big four and that there's one of them is there on historical merit rather than current innovation. I think that's probably a bit unfair. But there's no doubts about who the biggest and who the top of the list is. And that's pretty much due to one device, which is the iPhone. So recently, I've been waiting to get a new MacBook Air for 5 years. It's pretty amazing that it still runs, but I need a new one. So I was excited about the whole MacBook announcement recently, and then deflated by it, that the one that I wanted, they basically didn't really upgrade at all, but they put the price up. So a bit disappointing for me. And it's funny because I'm kind of in the middle. Apple's moving their computing business, the PC, to the top end for sort of power users and developers, although they're getting some criticism for not serving that well. But what they're really doing, if you take a step back and look at it, they're saying that most people who use computers for consuming internet or non-content producers, so people who are not designers, developers, engineers, etc., most of us probably, that Apple wants us to move to using iPads. And that's significant because in Apple's technology and parlance, iPad is mobile. So it's not a phone, but it runs on iOS, which is the same operating system. Oops. So definitely a shift there that Apple sees all of us moving towards mobile more and more. iPhone 7 came out, and lots of people complaining about ports and all that sort of stuff. But one of the things that didn't get that much mention was the camera, which we were discussing yesterday evening over dinner. So the iPhone 7 has actually got 2 cameras, which pretty much sets it up for an augmented reality device. So that's a potentially interesting shift. AirPods, which is going to be the wireless earphones, on the face of it seems like just a small innovation, but actually it's Apple making another wearable device. After they made the watch a couple of years ago, this is their pretty much their second wearable, and wearables I think are going to be important in the near future of tech. And then Siri, which is Apple's voice command interface, which has mostly been pretty rubbish up till now. They've opened up access to it to developers, so developers will be able to create new stuff on Siri or using Siri. So that's a pretty relevant trend as well. Over at Mountain View, this first thing is maybe the biggest of all of the trends we're going to look at today. Since Google's inception, their whole product, their whole business model, everything about them, the core of it all has been search and the Google search index and ranking. And they're changing it pretty much for the first time ever. In fact, they're creating a new one. So they're going to distinguish between mobile search and desktop search. So there's going to be a mobile-only index. Not only that, but they've said that they're going to prioritize the mobile-only index. So this is a massive signal that mobile is taking over everything. And it's hard to overstate that. I know that sounds a bit grandiose, but it really is. It really does seem to be the case. Pixel phone is something that Google also announced. So they've made phones in the past, and they've been making Android software for which basically anything that's not an iPhone runs on for years. But this is the first time they've gone head-to-head at the top of the market. They've made their own iPhone competitor. And I think this is possibly a step for Google to get back into the wearables game. They had that kind of slightly hilarious misstep with Google Glass a few years ago. I don't know if you ever saw any glass holes, but it was they were well named. But of course, but Google tries these things and gets things wrong, but they're Google, so we shouldn't laugh at them too much, seeing as they run the world. But Google Assistant is another element that's within Pixel phone. So again, a Siri competitor equivalent voice interface, a much better one than Siri, it seems. And Google have way more data than Apple do, so they're going to be better at this. But again, another indication of devices getting closer to us and us starting to interact with devices, technology, data in a different way. These are the guys that some people feel shouldn't be in the big five, that they've had their day. And they did make some mistakes. They missed the internet. They missed mobile. It's another big one. But and they missed mobile to such an extent that they've written it off. And Nokia has finally died a death, which is kind of sad if you remember how great Nokia was. But so Microsoft have basically said we're not going to pursue Windows Phone, but Surface, which is their tablet, has actually been a big success. And again, they see Surface as the future of computing for regular people. And if you think about how when Microsoft kind of took over the world, they never actually made any computers. They just made the software. And now they're making software and hardware. So again, devices and getting closer, physically, these companies getting physically closer to us. They've abandoned Windows as a business unit, pretty much, and moved it to Microsoft 365, which is, again, them catching up with the internet. Install software, people don't buy anymore, but people pay for services. But it is significant that they're becoming a service provider. They bought LinkedIn for $26 billion in cash, which is, so Skyscanner 1.4 billion, LinkedIn 26 billion. Quite incredible. And one of the ways that that could affect all of us, and if you're a marketer, it's definitely something to think about. LinkedIn has all this great data about people and their jobs and all this sort of stuff, and they're terrible at monetizing it. LinkedIn's advertising, targeting, all that stuff is really crap compared to, say, Facebook's. That'll surely change. And then HoloLens, mixed reality glasses, essentially holograms, projecting holograms into the real world. So after 40 years waiting, we might actually be able to do this, which I'm pretty excited about. So the next of our big five is Amazon. And there are some very interesting and potentially terrifying developments there. The first is Alexa, again, voice interface. This is how you can connect to Amazon and then Amazon's universe. And Alexa is software. And of course, if you think about Siri is on the iPhone and Google Assistant is on the Pixel phone, Amazon don't really have it. They did try to do phones, but it didn't work. So they don't have the device the way the others do. So the device that they've created is Echo, which is ostensibly a speaker that goes in your home or indeed your hotel room, etc. And you can listen to, you can use it as a regular speaker, listen to it, etc. But it's also listening to you. So you can talk to Alexa, you can talk to Amazon at any time. So think about that. Amazon will be in your home listening to you all the time. I'm not going to get one of those. Prime, Amazon Prime, you know, their sort of premium annual subscription covers your shipping cost type service. But it's also interesting that they moved into instant video. And you may have seen this week they launched a program with those three idiots driving cars. Which is, of course, is going to be a big success. So this is Amazon moving into the space of television. So we have Amazon and Netflix. They're competing with each other, but what they're really doing, I think, more interestingly, is competing with traditional TV. And if you think about the funding model in traditional TV, it's broadly advertising. This is not. This is subscription. So it's interesting to think about where TV ad money is going to go, because it's still about half of all ad money. And an interesting thing for Sky Sports to think about, because they charge a subscription and they give you ads. So these guys are just doing one, not the other. Facebook, then, they're thinking a lot about ads, and ad saturation risks starting to emerge. We're all starting to get either a bit tired of or a bit, we're starting to ignore Facebook ads. And this has happened in the past on other platforms. So Facebook are starting to push towards video ads and interactive ads more, because they're more engaging. Again, the fact that they're pushing towards video ads, it's not impossible to imagine that Facebook could become a de facto TV platform. New editorial responsibility mentioned there. They're in the news a lot. They're in the real news and the fake news. And there's a lot of questions about, are they a tech company? Are they a media company? Do they have a responsibility to have editorial control, etc.? They're trying to figure all of that out. At the same time, they're caving completely to everything the Chinese government wants about surveillance. So interesting times at Facebook, which will affect, everyone probably, but it'll certainly affect digital marketing. and advertising. Facebook are trying to protect themselves from disappearing the way their predecessors did, and the way sort of happens a lot, or pretty much always in tech, really, by diversifying. So there's Facebook, but then they bought Instagram. They have Facebook Messenger as a separate platform. They have WhatsApp, and they also have Oculus. And if any of you are gaming geeks, you'll know about Oculus. It's a virtual reality headset, particularly designed for gaming in the near term. But of course, if it takes off in gaming, I'm sure we'll see it coming into other facets of life. I think Alex knows a lot more about virtual reality than me, or perhaps anyone in the country. So we'll hear more about that later on. There's Lord Zuckerberg. That's not actually Oculus. That's Samsung's, and it's probably a bit crap, which is why he is very happy. So that's a quick look at what the tech companies, what they're pushing us towards. Here's what we're all, we the world are engaging with over the last couple of years, a big shift towards messaging. So a total change in communications through tech. You'll be familiar with some of these, maybe not all. Line is Japanese, Viber, European, Asian, African. WeChat is China. This is Apple's iMessage, which they very cleverly made you think it was just SMS, but turns out it's not. Facebook Messenger, and then WhatsApp. Facebook owning both of those last two platforms. And here's the number of users on these platforms. So between them, that's over 5 billion people. And obviously there's overlap. I have four of those on my phone. But there's been a big shift towards messaging, which we all need to think about, particularly if the audience that we're trying to reach is the fabled millennials. But this is another of the big platforms I didn't mention before. This is Snapchat, as you probably know. And they're an interesting use case, or an interesting example, because first of all, nobody under 30 can understand anything about it, which sadly includes me these days. But they also have 150 million daily active users. They have 1 billion snaps or pictures daily, and they have a pretty mind-boggling 10 billion videos viewed every day on their platform. 10 billion videos. 7 billion people on the planet? That's some crazy maths. So it makes that they're the biggest threat to Facebook, I think it's fair to say, and in some ways they are the biggest competitor for TV ad revenue when that starts to shift. Of course, that TV ad revenue is probably not going to start to shift for another few years, and Snapchat at that stage might not even exist, or could be, could be the Facebook of its day. Who knows? They've also quite interestingly gone into wearables just recently, just a couple of weeks back, and in a very different way to Google. So they're like the cheeky, cool upstart, whereas Google is now, in some ways, the old staid company, which is quite an interesting thing to think about. So the emerging patterns, and here are a few to think about. We've seen the tech, and where tech is pushing us. We've seen something that users are shifting the way they operate. Here are some things that I think are some clear patterns. The first one is that it's hard to overstate it. Mobile is now the dominant consumer technology, and I think that's only going to increase. Apple, by the way, makes more money from the iPhone than all of its other products ever combined. And the iPhone is the most successful single product in history. So we've had this dramatic shift towards that, and Google are now pushing us deeper into that. Voice is becoming a very important user interface, which changes the way we think and work. If you think about Google, for example, if you Google something, you get a bunch of search results, and Google can advertise against those search results or force those people to compete. Whereas if you ask Siri, where is the best bar in Edinburgh, it will give you one answer, and it's hard for them to advertise against that one answer. So a whole shift in business model there for Google, which of course would affect everything in the web. Wearables is narrowing the gap between technology and humans. Once upon a time, as you've seen the pictures of computers in the, Alan Turing's first computer, or the early days of the 50s, these a whole room size, and then they were sort of more compact. Then it was on a desk, and it was this far away. Then it was on a laptop, it was this far away. Then it was in your hand or in your pocket. Now it's on your wrist or it's on your face, it's not that hard to imagine that in the not too distant future it'll be inside you. But wearables changing our interaction with tech. IoT, Internet of Things, that we've been promised for so many years, is actually starting to finally happen, and particularly stuff like smart homes. You can now, if you have your home set up in such a way, you can turn on the heat. Now, -3 today, you probably want to get it on early. So all those kinds of things, or you could be overseas and you could turn on the lights in your house or whatever. There's a whole, and also the one that we've been promised is that your fridge can order the food without you ever being involved, and it can all be delivered and all that stuff. It's all kind of seems pie in the sky, but it's actually starting to become pretty real. And Amazon being in the home, again, think about what that means and what Amazon's business really is. So bricks and mortar retail is, of course, coming under huge pressure. I think if you're a niche retailer, you probably need e-commerce, but you can still survive. If you're a supermarket, for example, I wouldn't be buying shares in Walmart or any supermarket, really. Fulfillment is still an issue, but we're definitely moving towards a different world there. Messaging, I think, it's pretty clear that that's a generational shift. Asynchronous communication is preferred. In plain English, the younger people don't like talking on the phone, which is kind of ironic because they're on the phone all the time. But as perhaps we all are now. But definitely asynchronous communication, messaging, that's something to think about when you're addressing your audience. AR and VR, that's augmented reality, virtual reality, coming to entertainment. And what we always see these technologies. There's a beachhead market. There's a market that wants this tech, and it's usually a niche market. And if it goes well, then it becomes a mainstream thing. It's interesting with Apple Watch. When they launched it, nobody really knew what it was for, and Apple didn't know what it was for, and so it didn't really work very well. They launched Apple Watch 2, and all the videos, it's all about sports and health and fitness, and all of a sudden it has a purpose, and all of a sudden it has a market, and people are buying it. And sometimes that just takes time. Again, Google Glass. We will have Google Glass type stuff inevitably. Visual communication replacing textual ones for millennials, that's a big thing. The rise of Snapchat is the sort of testament to that. And something to think about for advertisers, for marketers, for any company branding themselves. And I think a good thing actually for tourism in Scotland, for example. We have pretty amazing visuals, whether it's cityscapes or landscapes, and the media are there to that's exactly the sort of thing that people want to consume. Media increasingly in the hands of tech companies, so we're starting to see disruption there, and probably we're going to see TV ad revenue move, but not right away, I think. But it has to go somewhere, and Facebook and Snapchat are currently two of the places that it's likely to go. We're not yet at the stage where you can do that. I don't know if any Star Trek geeks here. So what does this all mean for tourism? Here's a couple of things I think it means. Again, restating mobile. It's not just about we have to think about mobile. It's like you have to think about mobile first. Mobile is now much more important than desktop for most or many businesses. And Google's mobile index, anything that has the word Google in it is important. So we should be paying attention to that. Local SEO, again, that's also something that's important. If you are going to Aviemore for the weekend, you're sitting at home, and you search for best restaurants in Aviemore. You get some results, great. You go up to Aviemore, you take out your phone, of course. You do a search again, you get different results. And that's based on proximity, geography, and optimization by the brands for local SEO. So big opportunity there, because again, a lot of the time in tourism, if people are smaller operators, if you're a one-person band, you don't have a lot of time to be worrying about local SEO. But it actually is an opportunity to get ahead. Mobile as a sales channel, booking and payment. How many times have you tried to book a hotel room or a guest and it says, please call us? So there's anyone under 30 is probably just going to go no. Or the website is really rubbish and it's hard to find the booking. This is on a screen this size. Imagine on a screen that size. Again, people are just going to leave. So redesigning for that is going to be critical. It's unclear what the new opportunities will be, but they're certainly coming. But TUI, for example, the big travel company, they've started creating these sort of TUI bands for some of their resorts, where when you get there, you can your TUI band, use that. It's the key for your hotel room. It's your tab at the bar. It's also access to all sorts of services throughout the resort, and that's maybe an early example. But seamless, this is or frictionless connection between people and tech through wearables. That's the idea. We also have Pokemon Go, or we all heard about it, or we all wondered what the hell is Pokemon Go over the last year. But it's kind of opened the gateway a little bit to AR gaming. And the interesting thing about it is that it's location-based in this case. So again, very clear applications for tourism, I think. And you can have, we perhaps are going to hear about this later in the day. You could be at a museum, or you could be at an old building, and it just looks like it's an old ruined building. I wonder what this used to be. AR, and actually through your phone or through some kind of device, you get to see what it used to be, or you get to read all these, have all these extra interactive experiences. So pretty, and I think particularly for kids, this is going to be huge. Connectivity. This is maybe one of the downsides. So if you think, so once upon a time, you might have had an iPod, and you might have had all your music in your iPod. So if you're online, offline, it didn't matter. You had your music. That's all shifted. If you're offline now, you are annoyed that you can't get your music, or the many services that we connect to. So being connected. So if you're a hotel provider or a venue or any kind of, anything really, you go to a restaurant. What's the Wi-Fi code? People ask that all the time. So we're more and more online, and it's going to be the equivalent of having hot water in your hotel or whatever. And then channels. We've always needed to go where the market is. But perhaps at the market, it's easier to identify where the market is now. We can, and we need to sort of find people where they are, and we need to communicate them in the ways that they want to be communicated to. And being less tolerant of old channels. That really is pretty much referring to telephones and phone calls. So there's some of the challenges and opportunities. Moore's Law, famously, Gordon Moore was one of the co-founders of Intel. This is where Silicon Valley comes from, actually, semiconductors in California in the 60s. And he posited that, correctly, that the average processing power for computers doubles every 2 years, which has been true from then till now, pretty much. I wonder if it's also true for us. So thank you very much.
Very good, yeah, good. That's great. And if you think a lot of this is in the future, it's not really, because within our world, the festivals world where I work, just in the last year, we saw Uber using our festival's API to transport people between shows and venues. At the Science Festival last year, we did an experiment on this idea of people now, especially the millennials, being interested in the visual communications as opposed to text. We took the principles behind Tinder, not that any of us know what that is, and used it to apply it to the programs and create a new interface so people could explore the programs just in a visual way rather than with text, swiping for shows that they thought they were interested in. I actually, just before we start the next session, I want to ask a couple of questions following on from that. Who uses Apple? Wow. Who uses Samsung? If there's anybody's got a Note 7, that's the fire exits that way. Okay. Anybody using anything else? Okay, just mention. Sony? Moto? Okay. Blackberries for work, okay, yeah. Sorry? Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. Another question. Who uses Snapchat? Okay, interesting. Who uses Snapchat connected with business? Oh, very small. Okay, yeah, very small. Okay, interesting. Especially given what we said about the millennials. And also given what we said about Google Glasses. Any glass holes in the audience? No. I thought not. Okay.